Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. This is episode number 226, Seconds, the classic 1966 sci-fi psychological horror film starring Rock Hudson. With me tonight to discuss this classic from 1966, a great year of many things, it's my friend, my co-host, the one and only, Mr. Ross Amico. Ross, welcome.
Are we ready to start now?
Yeah, I know. We're starting, Ross, seconds.
I was going to say, how many seconds late are we? But yes, it was her second attempt to go on. Her little tribute to seconds.
Yeah. Exactly. It was only appropriate to have to let's say reboot. That's exactly what we actually had to do.
My goodness.
So, anyway, thanks folks for being patient. We appreciate you hanging in out there, and hope you're doing well on this Friday. And in New Jersey, it has been like spring, and we are actually on the edge of spring, but the weather has been incredible the last couple of days. I think it peaked at 78 degrees, if I'm not mistaken, which was really cool.
No, hot.
Oh, that's right. I forgot who I was talking to. Because I know how much you love the warm weather, Ross.
It wasn't 78 today, was it? It was yesterday. It was probably
yesterday. It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was close to that, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, my mom doesn't like the heat either. So.
Yeah. But there you go.
Anyway.
She has sense. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I want to welcome our viewers that are out there. Dennis Chevalier is first on the list, and he's joining us from Canada. Welcome, Dennis. Great to see you out there. Jeff Rubel is joining us from out west, from Utah. Hey, Jeff.
Mates. Yes.
Jerry Seward is out there. Jerry, welcome. Jerry, remind me, and I'm sorry, where are you located? And May is also joining us. May, please remind me where you're located, and I apologize.
Don't tell him.
No, tell me so I can...
Don't tell him.
It's the meeting. The memory is fading. Also, Lou is out there. Hey, Lou. Lou, we actually had less technical issues last week when we brought the studio to your house, and we actually broadcast last Saturday. So anyway, go figure. And whatchamacallit, Lou is joining us from Rhode Island. Randy Lee is out there. Randy, welcome. Randy is joining us from Wisconsin. And Jerry's saying this is going to be a great show. This is my favorite Rock Hudson movie. Yeah, I saw your comments. He did a great job. I totally agree, Jerry. Let me see here. And Randy saying Ross looks reverend with that black top and white color. And I actually kind of went with the film noir tie-dye shirt tonight. Yeah. I thought it was only appropriate. Sue is joining us from Massachusetts. Welcome, Sue. Great to see you out there. Cherry says hi. She's joining us. Hi, hon. She's joining us from Alpha, New Jersey. She's still working. And let me see. May is saying Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I am writing that down as I speak. I will not forget that. And then the next time we broadcast, May, and you are on, I shall remember that. And honestly, Russ will be there, even if he's not on the show, to make sure that I do remember it. I have faith in that.
Keeping you honest, Colin, keeping you honest. Yeah,
I know. And Colin is joining us from the UK. Welcome, Colin.
Colin.
Great to see you out there, too. So that's our roll call for right now. So,
all right.
Yeah. So, Ross, I know you had not seen this movie before, right?
No, and I'm a I don't know if ashamed is the right word. Maybe it's a little too strong, but I'm surprised that I had not heard of this movie. It being a John Frankenheimer film.
Exactly.
A classic. I mean, it was. And you know, right off the bat, it's like this is one of these movies where if you haven't seen the movie and you're watching this show, I feel sorry for you because we're gonna like blow the whole movie for you, and the movie is so good.
It is.
This is a Roy choice, and it was surprisingly good.
Nice. Yeah. Full disclaimer, folks: if you are watching this film and if you've not seen this movie, or if you have seen this film, and you were trying to debate who would have picked this movie, you probably would have gone with Ross over May. So fair is fair.
Yeah. Except there wasn't Santa Claus and the devil.
No, there you go.
Well, the devil might have been there, but we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about that later. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just hate to kind of take away from watching this movie. You should go to it with no expectations. You should just watch this movie, and if you watch our conversation, I know it's hard to do, but it would be, you can come back and watch the archive show if you want after you watch the movie. But say, oh, I don't care about this movie, and then we'll talk about it. You say, well, this movie sounds really interesting. It's too bad that they blew it for me.
No, I mean, to be fair, Ross, it's a what 50. Actually, this film was shot in 1965, so this movie is it was filmed 51 years ago. Yeah,
I don't subscribe to just because something's 57 years ago or 58 years ago that it's spoiling it is okay. If you haven't seen it, you haven't seen it. Good is good. Good is good, and a spoiler's a spoiler.
Yep.
So, yeah. Now you're agreeing with me.
No, what I'm agreeing. Well, there you go. What I will agree about is if you have not seen the movie.
Yeah.
You have no desire to see the movie, or if you don't care if you're spoiled by watching our show, stay tuned in. Well, Ross, the count just dropped. Everybody just fucked out.
Yeah. Well, but if you're like me, you can watch the show and 2 weeks later you won't remember anything about it, and then you can watch the movie.
It's called the senior moment, Ross.
Yeah. The senior 120 minutes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of remembering things, Randy just reminded May that it took me 4 years to remember that he was in Wisconsin. So there you go. He's also saying, I'm going to drop from this broadcast, watch the movie, and then come back for the replay. Okay, Randy.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to put anybody off, but that's a very good idea, Randy. I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then comment about it in the comment section after you watched it, and let us know what you think. And even if you don't want to watch the entire show through, which I would hope that you would, but if you don't, just make a comment and let us know what your thoughts were about the movie.
Our conversation will get better, I promise.
There you go. Colin is saying story must have been a real hardcore one for 1966. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. Definitely not the type of film that you would expect from 1966. That's for sure. Not
for a mainstream Hollywood movie. No. It's pretty wild film. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just couldn't from the start. It was just so engrossing, so engaging. And you really didn't know where it was going to take, because it was so sustained. You know what I mean? It wasn't like one of these things where it had a strong opening. It was just there were clearly 3 acts to the film. And I mean, I would argue, I don't know where you want to go with the conversation, but I would argue that maybe the middle portion wasn't as strong as the beginning and end. That's not to say it was necessarily weak. It just wasn't as so crazily, horrifyingly compelling as the beginning and end of the movie.
Yeah. There was definitely a build-up to everything.
Yeah.
And I would say it definitely went up like a roller coaster. It leveled off, and then it went even higher from there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it dropped, because it didn't. It was very intense.
It was a pretty intense movie at times. Yeah. It was like a nightmare. It went from surreal to nightmare. Yeah.
And I would say that if you are watching this film, you definitely have to be in a certain state of mind when you're watching
it. My state of mind. Yeah. It was like a Twilight Zone, or a Night Gallery, only taken to the next level.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you're saying that, because Sherry was even saying too, it reminded her of the Night Gallery when we were watching it. So
yeah, it reminded me of a lot of things. It was kind of it was an allegory. It was like kind of a morality play. It was kind of a deal with the devil story.
Yep.
There was all kinds of stuff in there, even though it's not overtly a deal with the devil. It's just the kind of thing that once you make a choice, you're seduced into making a certain choice, and once you make that choice, then it becomes. That's kind of like film noir too. You know what I mean? That the ground is constantly slipping out from under your feet, and you're heading for a bad end.
Ross, did you ever see the play Damn Yankees?
I never have. It's a take on the Faust story, though, right?
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah, I've
Sherry,
never seen Damn Yankees. Yeah.
she did it twice, but she played Lola in that. And really, and she reminded me, this story is very similar to that because it touches upon what you just said. It's like you're making a deal with the devil, essentially.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a very old tale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's interesting that they got Will Geer to play, you know, the kindly old.
Well, and interesting enough, though, I mean, Will Geer, we know him from back from the days of the Waltons. I mean, that's what, growing up in the 1970s, he was Grandpa Walton. But
Right.
I had actually, I mean, I've seen him in other portrayals. One that really comes to mind that really was a very strong performance was in a Mission Impossible episode. And
Mm.
he was like this ruthless doctor in this. I think the episode was called The Town, too. And it was an episode with, I think it was in the second season. Martin Landau. This was when Martin Landau and Barbara Bain were doing Mission Impossible. It's an excellent episode too, because it goes away from the usual mission. It's actually with Jim Phelps and Rollin Hand going to be on a like I'll say like a vacation type of situation. And what happens is Phelps encounters this town, and there's all this stuff that's going on that's covert operation that's being planned, and they're going to take out a base, and he just happens to stumble upon it accidentally. And then what they do is they wound up drugging him, and he can't talk. And I won't go further than that. But the point is, Will Geer is not this nice guy. In fact, he appears to be more ruthless in that than in this movie. But in this movie, he's pretty bad too, because of what essentially he's doing, and then what he does, what leads up to the end of this film.
Yeah. Well, Will Geer goes all the way back to the 30s. He was like involved with Orson Welles and John Houseman.
Mm-hmm.
There was a musical, some would say opera, called "The Cradle Will Rock," and it was a pro labor opera, and it was sponsored by the Federal Theater Project. Back during the Depression, they had all of these morale boosting American topics that were meant to energize the artistic community and build morale and get right music and theater for the people and that sort of thing. Well, the problem is that it did its job too well, and the Federal Theater Project tried to shut the theater down so the thing would not premiere. Because it was a very leftist show. And there's all kinds of, controversy around it. So they had uniformed guards at the theater at the night the thing was supposed to open. So what they did is John Houseman found out that there was a theater, like 20 blocks away that was empty. So they took everybody that showed up for the show, marched up, whatever avenue it was in New York City, and went into the theater, but they didn't have any of the props. They didn't have the costumes, and they weren't allowed to use the actors because of the union requirements and everything. So what happened was, and the musicians wouldn't perform. So what happened was the composer, Mark Blitzstein, who was born in Philadelphia, played the whole score from the stage on the piano, and the actors stood up in their seats and sang the roles from the seats.
Wow.
So in this way they were able to skirt like all the requirements, the regulations and what have you. And the show became like of course, this huge, succès de scandale, like a successful, notorious success kind of.
Right.
And so it holds kind of a cult status in the theater world.
And what was the name of the show?
The Cradle Will Rock. And Will Geer played Mr. who was kind of the corporate overlord, the industrialist who's like screwing the workers, who are trying to organize, kind of thing. So anyway, they made a movie about it, not a documentary, but a dramatized version of it about, 15, 20 years ago with Tim Robbins.
Okay.
And Will Geer actually appears in it, but he doesn't play himself. They got some of the people that were in the original production to play small parts in it. And the film's called Cradle Will Rock. Not a great film, but it's interesting because it tells a story.
Sure, and there's a lot of history around it, and that, I mean, for that to have actually occurred is pretty significant.
Yeah, Yeah, and he was really good friends with well, he's all involved with the folk movement. He was good friends with Woody Guthrie and Burl Ives, all these
Gosh.
crusty old bearded guys, yeah, who weren't old back then.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, even like with Orson Welles, what a difference in his appearance back then,
yeah,
as
yeah,
opposed to the way we would see him when he's being interviewed with Oliver Reed. And
yeah, yeah. It is amazing that somebody like Will Gear, who didn't even live to be that old, I don't think. I don't
no, he
remember
looked a
when he
lot
died.
older than he was.
Yeah, yeah, because Walton's wasn't even 10 years after this movie,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but he did so much, and the cinematographer James Wong Howe was around for a half century doing great work. But you were talking about Will Gear though about his character before, about him. It's because I don't know. I don't know where to jump in with this, but it's like, is he the um, innocuous kind of kindly avuncular face of evil, or was he genuinely thinking he provided a good service here when they started this thing, but it got kind of corrupted because it became almost corporatized. There was a board, and he had to answer to other people, and he kind of had a hard edge then. You know what I mean? Under the folksy exterior.
Well, I think that's what they try to portray. I mean, if you really think about it, what they were doing was really unethical. You know what I mean?
On every level.
On every level, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
just the whole notion and the whole idea. I mean,
Here
of
it
what
comes, folks. So if you haven't seen it,
we've really given you your chance.
yeah. But go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, but it's just that essentially it's dealing with people that are just not happy with their lives and are just like in a miserable state of existence and yearning for something different. It's almost like what was that? When they say the grass is always greener on the other side, or
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about like damn Yankees. We were talking about making the bargain with the devil. It's really all of that put together. And the science fiction elements of this film is the fact that the technology existed to do this. I mean, today, it's scary what they can do, right? But this is 1965. This was filmed 1966, where it was being broadcast. So it's almost 60 years ago. But essentially, with this organization, or this, as said, the company was doing was essentially changing a person's identity to make it look as though that they had died, and then they were considered to be a reborn and having a total different existence. On a certain level, it's almost like if you're in the what do they call it, the witness protection
Yeah.
program, but where you have a totally new identity, everything. But what was happening with this,
They
it
take
was
it to a whole other level.
exactly. I mean, the person's appearance was totally being changed. They were their
They fake your
family
death.
members, friends, everybody. I mean, were being lied to, and
Yeah.
essentially, yeah. I mean, they
I
were being
mean,
killed. Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, and right down to things like they would alter your voice. They do the operation of the vocal cords. They break your finger and set it a different way, so your handwriting would be different. There was just like, it was really extensive and gruesome, because they would actually show the procedure for, as well
Right,
as they dared, and in the they showed actual surgical rhinoplasty and that sort of thing,
right,
and included it in the film. You could tell because it was just too much with the sewing and all this business. And apparently, I guess the cameraman that they had passed out from, and Frankenheimer went and filmed it himself.
right. Yeah, during the
Yeah.
procedure, it was too much for him to take in.
Yeah.
Uh, Colin said, "Story must have been a real hardcore one for 1966." Absolutely.
It's still pretty hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. Anyone know if there's any truth to the story that the Beach Boys' Brian Wilson was afraid of this
Yeah.
film?
Yeah.
I read that also.
Yeah, so the story goes, and I think there's a little bit of credence to some of it anyway, that he walked into the theater right when they said, "Come in, Mr. Wilson," because
Right.
the character's name is Wilson in the film, and he was totally convinced that Phil Spector,
Mhm.
the famous rock and roll producer, who had a hand in putting up money for the film, by the way, was involved with this, and it was all just to kind of psych him out because of the Malibu setting and all the references to Mr. Wilson. So he was like totally freaked out, and supposedly, I don't know if this is true, wouldn't go to the movies. The next time he went to the movies was to see E.T. in 1982. So he's like totally put off going to the theater.
It was only 16 years later, though, Ross. Incidentally, that Malibu house was the director's John.
Frankenheimer's. Yeah, so much of you find out that so much of he just put so much of himself into the film. And his daughter.
Is that real life imitating the arts or what?
Yeah. And in the scene that was cut out of it, you kept waiting for him to meet his daughter because he mentions early in the film that she's out there on the West Coast. Turns out he does, but they cut it out of the movie.
Did you read who now she supposedly what happened was she was with her husband and they married and then they had I think a daughter together or a child together. Did you read who the husband was in the movie?
Yeah, I did. Leonard Nimoy was cast.
Leonard Nimoy, yeah.
Well, he wrote Nimoy also wrote so many roads leading to Star Trek. He also wrote the foreword for the one actor, Jeff Corey, who plays the other.
That was his acting. That was his acting teacher back in the day.
Yeah. So he wrote the foreword to his autobiography much later, but But anyway, the actress who played Rock Hudson's daughter in the movie apparently was, I think, Frankenheimer's wife.
Right.
So there were like all kinds of connections to not only Star Trek but to Frankenheimer's personal life in the film.
Jack said he's never seen this film.
We're going to totally ruin it for you, Jack.
Yeah.
If you really want to enjoy the movie, turn us off and watch the archive.
Lou said, I haven't seen this flick, but it sounds like it could be the sister of another movie called Change of Mind from 1969. Maybe more like it could be a double feature.
Yeah.
Sue saying I would be interested to hear if either Roy or Ross has seen Change of Mind and if they can make a comparison to seconds. I have not seen that movie.
No.
And I see
I'll tell you.
Fred is joining us. Fred, welcome to the show. He said the movie has Oscar Goldman in it, so it's worth it for me to see the movie. Yeah. Yes, it does. Absolutely, Fred. And thanks for being on the show and joining.
And don't think I didn't say we can rebuild him.
You were thinking about it, Ross.
Yeah. Well, you're in a bad place when it starts out. Well, it doesn't start out there, but when your entrance to this organization, you have to walk through the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, and talk about imagery with that, right?
Yeah, or used cows as it was advertised.
Matt's out there. Hey, Matt. He said, "Hey guys, I'm out singing for the Irish mob on 13th Street, and I've got a freshly malted tarantula at home, so I might only be able to catch a bit of the show."
That's all right. We'll spoil it for you quick, Matt. Yeah, they've been celebrating St. Patrick's Day in Philly already for a week.
Wow.
I mean, I think the parade was last weekend, or it's like usually they do that. They'll do it because the holiday's during the week, so they celebrate on the weekend. But then thinking about it, it's like, wait a minute, St. Patrick's Day is not until Sunday. So what's the deal? Oh, it's Philadelphia. You got to start partying on the Friday before.
Jeff said, "Wow, never heard of this. Must have made a lot of people sick back in the day, like Alien. People were running out of the theater, losing their lunch. Yikes." Hey, happy to hear that, Fred. Glad that you're a new subscriber. And glad you're enjoying the content. Welcome.
No, this was actually more intense than Alien, I think, this movie. Personally.
Yeah, I would say.
It's a totally different kind of movie. But, you know, you go in Alien expecting a certain... I don't know, it's more of a fantastical setting, I think, Alien. This is like... It's a little too close to home, I think.
Yeah, because it feels like it's almost conceivable, especially more now than then. That's what's really crazy about that whole thing.
Yeah, on a lot of levels. But it also is very much of its time because it kind of buys into that whole, or feeds off of that whole post death of a salesman kind of malaise and discontent with your career, and you're bored with your job, and you're in a nowhere marriage, a loveless marriage, and you feel trapped and you want to escape, and so it just totally milks that. with the circumstance of the bank executive, with his wife. He can't even talk to her. This is total small talk. And then they have that excruciating kiss at the beginning with the camera and super close up where there's no passion at all.
I know.
And they sleep in the separate beds. And then the irony is that later in the film, and again, folks, if you haven't seen the movie, watch the archive show, shut this off because it's a good movie. But later on in the film, when he revisits the wife, they actually have a real exchange. Yeah. And it's because she doesn't know. You know what I mean? She totally unburdens herself. Well, it's not really unburdening, but she speaks totally honestly to her husband for the first time. And, the conversation they should have had, to begin with, that may have headed off some of this. You can't blame anybody but him. Well, on the one hand, you can't blame anything but the main character. But on the other hand, how much is free will and how much was he kind of manipulated?
Well, here's the thing, and we'll go into this, and this will ask these questions because I'm curious what your take was on this.
Yeah.
Before I do that, Shari's commenting. She's saying no shower scene in this, but a crazy orgy grape tub bath.
Well, see, that's the part that Matt has to see is the crazy bathtub, wine orgy.
Yeah. Before we go, we'll come back to that. Just hold that. Hold that thought. We'll come back to that. I promise. We'll come back to that. The only thing I'm going to say is it was not intended to be an orgy, but what happened was Paramount, pretty much the suits got involved, and that's what it looked like it turned into. But that was not what it was. That was not the direction Frankenheimer wanted to go. But that's kind of like the direction that was depicted, unfortunately. But we'll come back to that. So just hold.
That's
hold
what
that
he says. That's what he said.
That's what he says. Yeah. So, anyway. He's actually been contacted now. When I say he, I'm referring to, no, it's interesting too. Rock Hudson is playing the younger person, the younger person that's altered.
But he's older then, but he's younger.
Right. He's young. Well, yes. He's the younger version of himself that has been altered to look younger, but in actuality, he's not. But we'll leave it at that. The movie starts with, here's the plot. No. With the actor who is John Randolph. Interesting about him, like Jeff Corey, he had been blacklisted, and I think he had not acted like in almost 15 years, too.
And Will Geer, Frankenheimer loved working with communists or accused or alleged communists, because they all took the fifth, of course, or wouldn't name names. Right. But yeah, they're all blacklisted in this movie.
Yeah. Exactly.
Except for Rock, I think.
Yeah, but, not Rock. Yeah. But anyway, he essentially is being contacted by a friend who he believes to have been killed and keeps getting these calls. And the movie starts off where he's getting a phone call and he's taking the call and he's pretty much telling this person not to call back. And this has been going on for some time. And it's part of the only part of the conversation that he's really having with his wife is that he's getting these upsetting phone calls, and he doesn't even really tell her what the calls are about. It's just that they're upsetting him. So it really depicts how separated they are. On so many levels. And then finally, when he talks to this so-called friend and says who he is, I think it was, and that was Murray Hamilton. He's playing Charlie. He's trying to convince him, John Randolph's character, who is Arthur Hamilton before the change, that he is alive and he needs to speak to him. And he wants him to, he verifies that it's him by telling him that there's something on the mantle, it's inscribed, and basically telling him stuff only that his friend Charlie would know. What seems interesting to me, though, Ross, is that he seems like he's just very upset with life. He's in this place, he's pretty much miserable. And out of nowhere, he just follows the instructions to meet with this company. And then the next thing you know, he's signing the dotted line. You know what I mean? It happens so quickly.
But did you mention that I missed, I kind of was thinking about stuff. Did you mention that Charlie was supposed to be dead?
Yeah, I did mention that.
Okay, you did. Yeah, so it's like kind of out of nowhere, but apparently it wasn't the first time Charlie contacted him.
Right, and that's, it's that.
So he's been trying to contact, so he's already had time to think about this and puzzle over it. But the other thing is about signing on the dotted line or what have you. They feed him all this stuff when he's sitting there, because he says, well, is there anything in your life? And he goes, well, it's like, I've got a daughter, I've got this, I'm up for the presidency of the bank. I'm probably going to get this. I've got friends. And the guy like looks at him and he goes, nah, you're right. I'll sign or whatever.
Jeff Corey.
They kind of make him go through the whole work through the whole thing. But he signs. It feels like almost he's coerced, but he wouldn't have been coerced if he didn't want to do it.
Sure.
But they also drug him at a point.
And then to find out what his basic wants are, and
supposedly, yeah. But during the course of that, then they stage this thing where it's almost like he's sexual. They film it in such a way that it looks like he's going to sexually assault somebody.
Right.
And they're going to use it as blackmail if they don't allow him to do this. So like, what's that about?
Yeah.
I mean, how's that fit into this place is a pretty shady corporation, shady company that he's fallen in with. I forgot that detail, Ross. So it's like if he doesn't move forward with it, they'll blackmail him and then he'll lose everything. Right.
Or he moves forward and then he basically gives up his life. But what do you think would have happened if he would have said, "Oh, screw it, I don't care, I'm leaving anyway"? They probably would have killed him anyway. Right.
At that point, it was just a really creepy scenario. And what's doubly unnerving about it is it puts you in a situation where you're putting your friends in this kind of circumstance. He was sold out by his friend, basically.
Yeah.
And the only way you can get out of it kind of is to name. There it is, the name the names.
Right.
That's why so many of the accused communists were involved. It was all about naming names.
So maybe that really was
turning in your friends. Yeah.
Yeah. It was almost like a parallel statement to that. What was going on? Could be. Good work. Good analysis.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I'm sure I'm probably not the first one to think it, but it just occurred to me. But
that's a good point. Yeah, and here's the other thing too. So by his friend Charlie providing Arthur's name as a person that potentially could go through this program so that they could make money, Charlie is giving the opportunity to essentially get a makeover, to get a second. Although in Charlie's case, it would almost be a third. Now, here's the other thing. Do you think that Charlie was killed at the end of the movie? Or do you think he was given the opportunity to be replaced?
I know, they leave that ambiguous. I think he was given an opportunity. And I think the reason that, folks, if you haven't seen the damn movie, shut this off.
Well, we lost a few viewers.
This is a good movie.
We've lost a few viewers, so I think you've scared enough people off.
Yeah.
So
all right. Because watch the movie first. But I'm going to say, I think that they gave him another chance, and the reason that Tony doesn't get the chance is,
and Tony, folks, just to remind you, is Rock Hudson. So he's there's like the before, and then there's the after, and the before is Arthur, who is John Randolph, and then the after is Tony, who's Rock Hudson. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, I was trying to fake him out by saying Tony in case they didn't see the movie, but now it's spoiled no matter what. But the reason that Tony doesn't get the other chance is because he doesn't name names. And it's not, I don't know if it's like a show of integrity, like he's not going to give anybody up, or the fact, on the surface level, he just says he doesn't know anybody. He's been trying to think of somebody and he can't think of anybody. He can't come up with a replacement. So is it just has his character developed, because it's one of these things where his existence as it was so bland and so lacking in excitement or imagination or anything like that. And he was supposed to come back as this painter, an artist, which is like totally a reversal. It's a celebration of, or tapping into your creative impulses. You know what I mean? And now it comes to this point where, well, maybe he never had the imagination after all, because Will Geer says it's like, well, maybe he never had a dream to fulfill. He's disappointed that he didn't get to fulfill his dream, but he said, maybe you never had a dream to fulfill. So is it true that it ultimately Tony Rock Hudson when he says he didn't have any idea, maybe he just was somebody who wasn't resourceful, and he was good at putting in the time and working his way up in the bank or what have you. But
Right, because that was essentially like what his strengths were. He
he did what
was
he was supposed to
doing
do.
what he
Yeah,
was good at.
yeah,
However, he was thinking that he wanted other things, and the other things that he wanted, he only felt that he wanted because he really didn't have them. And then when he had the opportunity to actually experience it and actually, potentially fulfill it, it really wasn't fulfilling. And he realized what he was missing was what he already had. And again, that's where it comes back to, the grass is always greener on the other side,
right. And then you can't go home.
and you
Did,
can't
did,
go home.
did you think at any point for a second that he might try to woo his wife again under his new person, under his new guise?
I was a little bit border on that. I was
Only at
thinking
the yeah,
possibly, but
yeah,
I not so much. I think
yeah.
I was feeling the regret. And here's the other point too. The studio did not want to go with Rock Hudson with this.
Mm,
And well, I guess one of the choices too was Laurence Olivier. That was a choice that they had for this film.
right.
And they felt that no for him because of
Yeah.
his, which really surprised me because I mean, Laurence Olivier, oh my God. And I guess the other person that they really wanted to get was Kirk Douglas, because Kirk Douglas's production company actually financed this film. And we
Right.
talked about that just last
A-
week with the other movie, The Vikings.
Absolutely. And the studio thought that Laurence Olivier wasn't a big enough name, ironically, as far as a
Yeah,
box office draw. Kirk Douglas would have been a good choice. Kirk Douglas had another commitment, but
right.
but it would have been a totally different movie, though.
Oh,
The thing that Rock brought to it, though, was the idea that suddenly it wasn't going to be the same actor playing both parts.
right.
Because before they were thinking about doing this thing where they were going to make him up, and then in the second half of the movie they take the makeup off and he'd be presumably Kirk Douglas or whatever. But Rock Hudson said he didn't feel he wanted to stretch. He wanted to show that he could act in something other than romantic comedies. But he didn't feel like he would be convincing pulling off both parts of that role. And Frankenheimer thought about it, and he thinks Rock Hudson was right that he was totally uh, perfect for what the part that he played in the film, and they needed to get somebody else to play the kind of the Willie Loman character, the gray, worn out, guy that's been chewed up by the American dream, chasing the American dream. Uh,
No, and I think that was a smart direction to go with it. I mean, they would have been using a lot of makeup, obviously, to make him look older, and then he would have been really concentrating on that, and it potentially could have limited his performance. And then the other thing is he would have probably been trying to really exaggerate his performance in regards to the character that he was playing as the younger version, or the remade version, I should say, because he wouldn't have been younger. He would have been the same age, but it would have been Tony with the makeover, as opposed to Arthur, who essentially was, feeling old and decrepit. But and what's really funny is John Randolph was only like 53 when he did this movie.
yeah, I know.
It's like, ow.
There's
But
so many. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say though that I really felt that Rock Hudson did a great job, and you really felt for what he was going through. I mean, I thought he really conveyed he went outside of his box, and he really tried to, as an actor, really do something different. It was, to your point, and what he had said, that he didn't want to just do romantic comedy with this film, which he was not doing. And I don't think it was really overacted either, because I mean, there is terror that essentially happens later on, and I was sensing that it was going to go in that direction, and I was almost hoping it wasn't going to, because
Right.
but they had a way of essentially saying, "Oh, everything's going to be fine, and this is the corporation. Just
Yeah.
just do this, do that, and everything will be great." And he had this almost like a butler that was watching over him. And the one actress too that really had this was second billing, and also with we didn't really cover it, but all roads lead to Star Trek in that sense. Um, and actually, let me do this. Hold on one second. All right, there we go. And that was with I'm probably pronouncing her name incorrectly, but Salome Jens.
Well, it'd be Salome, probably. Salome. I don't know if she said Jens or Jens. Probably Jens because she was American. And I think she was a Polish extraction anyway. Jens was just kind of a stage name. So it's probably Salome Jens. But yeah, I didn't realize that it says in her bio that she's best known for Star Trek. It's like,
absolutely. She was in Sue out there. I know, big trekker. Being one of the founders, and she was the one that Yodo always conversed with, and she was a major part of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And then also she was in Star Trek The Next Generation in a episode which was really part of the foundation, they even said, with in regards to Picard, but you never did see her in Star Trek, as Sue was saying, but very similar looking type of makeup in both series though that she was in. But interesting too, I read that she was in The Outer Limits, and I said, you know what? I bet you I know which episode it was, and it turned out to be, and it was the Corpus Earthling. And the irony is, the Star Trek connections, obviously, with The Outer Limits. Barry Atwater, who played Serac in the later third season episode, was also in that Outer Limits episode with her, and she's done quite a range of stuff. And very, very cool. She did a great job.
Yeah, she's so striking. And I was looking at her bio, other than the Star Trek stuff, and she's another one of these actors where she did so much on the stage before she got into the movies. I mean, she made the several of the actors had great successes on stage, including John Randolph, before he got into the movies. And then they wind up making kind of, you see that the movies they make aren't as quite as satisfying maybe as the stage stuff they were doing, although she made a few off the wall movies along the way. But she was also a dancer and a student of Martha Graham, who's one of the great modern dancers.
I saw that.
Yeah, so she's and you got to kind of sense of that by the way she moved in her early scenes when she was jumping around the beach and everything.
Yeah, there was a very, I don't know if graceful is the right word, but it just that her movements, there was almost a technique to it. It wasn't like an awkward type of move. It was very thought out, very calculated, but in a very sophisticated manner, so to speak.
The body must learn, but she's still alive, by the way.
She is. She's like 88 years old.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Oh, and I apologize. So I didn't realize I said Yoda. I meant Odo. That's funny. I didn't catch that. Jeff saying, I always wondered what she looked like. Never saw her without all that makeup. Yeah, and it's really interesting that, again, when she was in Star Trek The Next Generation, she was playing this 3D version, or it was an image from the past of this alien. And the way she's made up is very similar to the way she looks when she is in Star Trek Deep Space Nine as one of the founders. So it's very similar. But as Ross said, she was very pretty, very striking. She was only like 30 years old when she did this movie too, which is, interesting.
There was so much ambiguity in the film. This is one of those movies where when you're watching the movie, you're thinking other things while you're watching the movie. Also, it really makes you think about stuff. And there's so much ambiguity in the movie, and so many kind of conflicting dilemmas. It's like if he puts a foot this way, he's wrong. If he puts a foot this way, he's wrong. Like the whole second act where he's like, oh, he's too inhibited. So the counterculture, bacchanalia or whatever. So they got to like strip him naked and throw him in the grapes. But then he turns around and goes to the cocktail party with the supposedly sophisticated, neighbors there. And then he gets too loose, and then he gets in trouble for that. They hold him down, smack him around, and say, "Look, you can't be that loose."
No, and that was the funny thing too, because she's trying to stop him from drinking, and saying, I don't like it when you drink so much. And
what happened?
Right, it's all about the balance. He goes from one extent to the other, and he's trying to accept everything that he's been put into this new life, and they're trying to incorporate him. His butler that is trying to get him to attend this cocktail party, or to have a cocktail party to meet with the neighbors. Because what's happened is he's relocated. He was in New York. Now he's in California. and it's a totally new life, a totally new existence. Will Gear is, when he's talking to him, essentially tells him that he'll be furnished with paintings and artwork so he can sell them, and it'll almost be like he's starting this new life. He'll have the opportunity to learn his craft. It's just everything is, the foundation is being planted. But what's very interesting though is this corporation, this company really feels that he may have a problem adapting and making this transition. And it sounds like this is something that they've encountered before. So what they've done is they've put in these safeguards for themselves into place to almost ensure that these quote unquote reborns are actually transitioning the way that they feel that they should in order to be functional in society. And what they do is essentially place them in situations where they almost have, I'll say, I don't want to say mentors, but people that are overlooking them. And when he meets her, when Rock Hudson meets her on the beach, she's just doing her own thing, and he strikes up a conversation, and then from there, the relationship starts to bloom. What he does not realize, though, is that she has been almost as an employee of the company placed to meet Rock Hudson, Tony, just to ensure that everything goes well. And they seem to have an attraction to each other, and they really seems to be getting intense. Things are going in that direction, and he's starting to loosen up, as you were saying. But then what happens is he can't control himself, and then he goes to the other extent, and they have that cocktail party. He starts getting basically toasted and gets out of control, where he starts talking about his past, which is something that is forbidden. You're not supposed to talk about your past. It never happened. It never occurred. And what he doesn't realize is that everybody that's around him that is attending this cocktail party, they've all gone through what he's gone through. And it's almost like if you break the code, you're causing this this anger to be, erupted, and everybody's going to turn on you. Everybody that you think is your friend really isn't, which really says something for it's a message in itself too. It's like, do you really know who your friends are? Are they really your friends? And then to add injury to insult, when he's being held down and he's yelling, she comes flying in through the door, and he's like looking for her to help. And then she basically is telling him to shut up and saying, "Who do you think you are?" And it's like, what the heck just happened here? And it's very terrifying in that sense.
They're unnerving. Yeah, there's a lot of social commentary, a lot of subtext there, and it's not for nothing they call us, or they place us as part of Frankenheimer's paranoia trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
With the Manchurian Candidate and 7 Days in May. This is kind of the third leg of the. He didn't plan it as a paranoia trilogy, but that's how it gets classified. What? Oh, she was in Green Lantern.
She was, and I didn't realize. I read that, but I didn't remember seeing her in that.
See, that's the thing. You go from these early triumphs on the stage, and then like later on, you're doing stuff like Green Lantern, or John Randolph. I forget what he was. Oh yeah, he was like the father in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It's like, what are you talking about? It's like, how can you go from this to this?
Well, and that's what's unnerving. Not unnerving to the level of the story, but it's a shame too, because a lot of probably the best work that she has done or other actors have done has been on the stage. And then what happens is I'm not saying that this isn't good work, but what a lot of times happen is somebody does a movie or even a TV show, and it reaches acclaim because for whatever reasons, maybe, if it's a cult classic or if it's something that just is, knocked out of the park. But it really doesn't matter. The fact is that you could have done all this body of work, before, and perhaps maybe the level of work you've done with these productions does not reach what you did previously on the stage, but it's just because you're associated with that, it just proclaims you to a totally different level. But I guess that's really looking at the whole picture. You wouldn't have had that opportunity if you hadn't done the stage work. So there you go.
Well, it's like Rock as the painter when he becomes Tony, the painter. um, they don't just invent him out of nothing. There was this painter who had that name, who was Tony Wilson, and he's kind of stepping in. And Tony Wilson has already had a career, so they said, "All right, you're going to have all these old paintings and stuff. You already have the acclaim. So no matter what you do, you can develop your technique. But no matter what you do, this is a very insightful comment. They said it. You've already made it.
Right.
So whatever you do is all right. That people think you're breaking out and developing a new style or something like that. But how often is that true? Like it's something that's crap in any field. As long as you're famous, it's fine. Or as long as you're wealthy and respected and successful, you can do whatever you want.
It's like, oh, so and so did that. Oh, that's great. Yeah. He was a part that he or she was a part of that. That's really cool. That's really interesting.
You're not
if it was like somebody like if it was you or I, it's like, really? That's what they got.
Like the show,
Easy, Ross.
Like if John Randolph or Salome Jen showed up and did the show, they'd say it's genius.
What are you saying, Ross?
But then he runs into somebody at the airport who recognizes him. So you start to think, well, wait a minute. And
now, what did you think about that whole thing?
It was at first I was wondering myself because they said they wouldn't plant somebody there because nobody was around to see this. Right. And then you kind of start again, your wheels are turning the whole time you're watching the movie, and you kind of start putting pieces together. And when you find out what's going on at the other end of the thing, you kind of learn that they just keep swapping these identities and keep they've got prototypes they seem to use. Mm-hmm. And he was not the first. He was so similar to his predecessor that he was recognized at the airport, is what I think, by the other guy.
Exactly. Yeah. That was my takeaway.
Yeah.
And I found, so you have this entire buildup of, and as Ross was saying earlier, it's almost like this movie is sectionalized. You could say that about really any film. Mm. And you have his before life. Mm-hmm. You have the life that he had, mm-hmm. or was having rather, which was, his current life. And he's trying to accept it. He's trying to embrace it, and he's not doing very well. And he cracks under pressure. And going back, we didn't really talk about it, but Shari mentioned it. And in regards to that one scene, and here we go, the big, the orgy. I spelled so much wrong.
Yeah, the whole counterculture. They were followers of Dionysus or Bacchus or what have you, and they had that wine ceremony, the grape ceremony. Stomp those grapes. Stomp those. It turned on Wicker Man.
I didn't realize something like that actually goes on where they stomp on the grapes like that.
Oh, you didn't know that's how they make the wine?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, I'm not drinking that wine. I'll tell you that. When you get a tub full of hippies, tub full of naked hippies stomping on the grapes, I'm not drinking that wine.
That's pretty nasty, actually.
It's worse than I Love Lucy.
There we go.
Yeah.
And it's like he wants no part of it. And then what happened? And she's like this free spirit. And then she goes right into it. And then he's trying to pull her out because he's trying to get her away from there. And then the next thing you know, he's being pulled in, and it's like, what the heck just happened? And then not only is he pulled in and he's all serious about it, but he's really enjoying it then.
Yeah. There's a scene like that in Hermann Hesse's Steppenwolf, the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing where he's kind of, really reserved and not the free. He winds up with the free spirit, and they wind up going to a nightclub, and But anyway, I mean, there are a lot of things that reminded me of, but this was a very peculiar scene, and kind of, if you're going to follow the whole. I don't know if it's a religious allegory or if it's just Faustian with the deal with the devil or whatever. It was kind of a, there was something about this scene, that I found very unpleasant.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a, the din of hell or something. I don't know. It was a little, and they were all avowed pagans. I mean, they were all, about Bacchus and the old ways. And I love when they had the donkeys with all the grapes on them. And I don't know. maybe in my 20s I would have enjoyed doing that, but now, I just want to stay home.
You old man.
I know. No, it's going to be a bank executive.
I'm going to call you Arthur instead of Ross.
I'll be president of the bank. Yeah. Yeah, you'll be calling me in the middle of the night saying, oh, you got to go to the slaughterhouse. Give him the name Wilson. But they take him. He goes to the sweatshop first, though, or the laundry, and then they give him the address of the slaughterhouse, and then they make him ride in the back of that truck. It's just, nothing any good's going to happen there. Yeah, it's and the cinematography by James Wong Howe. He was one of the great cinematographers, legendary cinematographer. He'd been lensing movies since 1923, since the silent era, and he did everything. You know what I mean? It's not, you think, oh, well, he's a great cinematographer, so he just did classics. But that's not the case at all. If you look at the list of things that he lensed, it's amazing. It's just like if you watch Turner Classic Movies for 2 days, multiple films will have been shot by James Wong Howe.
I was surprised to read that he did Funny Lady.
Yeah, that was his last movie. They kind of
75
kind of brought him back from semi-retirement at that point, because apparently he was not doing well health-wise, but that was his last, I think that was his last movie.
Yeah, it was.
He did the Molly Maguires around that time, maybe just before. He did some great films in the 30s. He did The Prisoner of Zenda with Ronald Colman. He did King's Row in the early 40s, one of my guilty pleasures from that era. He did he got 2 Academy Awards for HUD, with Paul Newman and Patricia Neal, and he got another one for The Rose Tattoo, based on the Tennessee Williams play with Burt Lancaster.
But also, too, Ross, I mean, he was nominated for so many movies, too. What was one? Air Force, King's Row. What was the other one?
10 nominations, yeah.
Abe Lincoln in Illinois, I think was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think Raymond Massey plays him again. Raymond Massey's always playing Lincoln back then. What was the other one that he I didn't realize. I learned for the first time that James Wong Howe shot the live action scenes in Fantasia with the musicians that stand in for the Philadelphia Orchestra with Leopold Stokowski. He's the one that filmed those the live action scenes.
Fantasia.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool that he did all those things. But he did like Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House. Just like some people like that. Cary Grant and Myrna Loy and the guy who always plays the third wheel to Cary Grant. He was in Trading Places and I'm talking about it's on the tip of my tongue.
So close.
I mean, it's not even.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of the guy's name. Yeah.
Name. Oh man, I hate that when it's like right here.
Yeah.
But again, Melvin Douglas. I'm sorry. So anyway, what's that?
Good job.
Yeah, but it bears nothing on the conversation. But I mean, he did stuff like that. That was just kind of like, it's enjoyable Sunday afternoon movie. And then he turns around and does a complete classic, He
passed away at an early age, though. He was only 77 when he passed.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was shortly after. Shortly after Funny Lady too. It was only, I think, maybe the next year.
But seriously, the cinematography in this. I mean, there's a prototype kind of the Steadicam. Right from the beginning, they have that really disorienting, crazy thing where they must have the camera on a harness on the actor or something.
They did. That's exactly what they did, and they did it several times within the film, and it was a unique perspective of the way they photographed everything. And plus, it's in black and white. I mean, that in combination of the technique of the way they went about doing the filming, it really, really worked. And even with the camera angles, between the difference with. I mean, Rock Hudson, I believe he was probably about maybe 6'4", and he was a big guy. As compared to John Randolph, I think there was like a 5-inch difference in height. But what they did was the way they photographed Randolph, you really couldn't tell that he was shorter because they really tried to do the whole perspective in a certain way. And speaking about the filming too that took place, and this ties into Frankenheimer, that scene that's shot at Grand what was it, Central
Yeah, Grand
Station,
Central Station,
Grand
right?
Central Station. He was brilliant because what he was worried about was that when they were filming, that people would be drawn to them. So what he did was he hired a guy that was all built up and a Playboy bunny to do this special scene and set it up with a fake camera crew so that the people that were in there would be drawn to that. And then what he did was he actually filmed in another area going through Grand Central Station where the harness was on one of the cameramen, and then basically they were just walking through. So it was a
Right.
great diversionary tactic that he used for that. So a
Yeah.
lot of good thought went into this movie.
Yeah, it was very William Friedkin because I haven't read anything to this point, but I have a feeling they must have done it without permit or something because
Yeah,
all the things that I'm reading about the diversions that they would create in there and just kind of walk through and have the camera in a suitcase or something. I don't think anybody knew that they were filming, but there was a lot of extreme close-ups, a lot of perspiration.
Yep.
It was kind of like that part was kind of like film noir, but it was like Alfred Hitchcock meets Carnival of Souls. I don't know if you ever saw Carnival of Souls. It's like a really surreal, low budget horror movie, but it had a little bit of that feeling to it. I'm sure they weren't paying homage to that, but and then this with the fisheye lenses, like you said, they had all these really unusually low and high camera angles, so you couldn't really get a sense like why in this room with the scene with the husband and wife is the camera positioned here. It would be like either very low or very high. And there's a lot of that going on in this movie. And when he was drugged, you really felt that sense of
you did
the spaciness, balloon head, vertigo, what have you. But yeah, it's really a virtuosic piece of cinematography and the editing, the crazy editing where the shots would jump within a single scene, where somebody would be like this and then like this. And it was very like French New Wave kind of thing, but also very with the camera angles and stuff. It had a little bit of that German expressionist to it. It reminded me a little bit of not completely, but it reminded me a little bit of that movie we did with what was the name? Remy Caution. What was it? Alphaville.
Oh, yes.
French movie we did with the craziness. But
well, it's interesting too, because one of the things that I noticed, touching upon what you're saying about the filming style, there's a scene that takes place where he's talking to his wife, and he's sat, and what the camera does is it actually does a close-up on his hands as he's pretty much going like this, and just to try to give the audience the feeling of perspective as far as what's happening, and it's just a moment that's captured. And I thought it was pretty interesting because it's just not there's nothing ordinary about the film technique used in this film, and to me that's part of what makes it that much more special. It's or in the sense of a classic.
It's a movie about freedom. It's a movie about choice.
Yeah.
And yet it's so claustrophobic.
Very.
And so inevitably tragic. And
it's interesting too how when he first arrives, he's in that room that his friend is in, and he doesn't even realize it's his friend because his friend has had the makeover, and that is Mary Hamilton, Charlie.
Right.
And actually I'm gonna go back to just show some images to different folks that are in this. So right there you've got Rock Hudson, and then on the beach you have him with Salome Jens, who is Nora, and then also you've got John Randolph there, and that's supposed to be the before of Rock Hudson's after. And then you have Will Geer, and then Jeff Corey. Jeff Corey was cracking me up because he kept eyeing up the chicken, the chicken dinner.
And I want to know if that's in the script or if that's some business he worked out on the day and they loved it and they kept it in, because he became a big acting teacher.
Sure.
As you said, he was the teacher of Leonard Nimoy, but he was, he taught Robert Blake, Jane Fonda. There were tons of famous actors, James Coburn, all studied with this guy. And it's the kind of thing somebody who's an actor would work out, like, especially somebody who'd be an acting pedagogue. It's like, let's do this business with the chicken. It'll give me a dimension to this character, and I can work with this through the scene.
And look at it, Ross, 58, 59 years later, here, we're talking about it. So he did something.
Well, yeah, I had no idea about this guy, because I recognized him immediately as, what was the guy's name? From True Grit, Tom Chaney, who was the guy who winds up at the beginning of the movie committing the murder that kind of puts the whole story in motion. And he was also in Butch Cassidy. He was Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. He was the sheriff, Bledsoe. So I remember seeing him in those westerns, and I was trying to place him with his hairy eyebrows. By the way, if I didn't get my if this were still COVID, I would probably have Jeff Corey eyebrows.
Do you remember Superman and the Mole Men?
Yes. And he was in that, supposedly, right?
He was in that, yes. And there's a publicity shot of him with the gun holding, at Superman that turned out a lot. And I can't think of the character's name, but that was shot in 1951, so that would have been like 14 years before this.
Yeah, I didn't know that he was in that, but I did see the movie.
Yeah,
I read that he tried out for Lex Luthor in the 1978 Superman.
Oh, I did not know that.
So apparently on the DVD, I must not have watched the extras, but there's footage on there of him as Lex Luthor. So,
yeah,
I don't know what edition, which DVD, but
that's an interesting. That's definitely an extra. That's an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, I can't imagine him as Lex, but then again, I couldn't imagine Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor either before I saw him.
There you go.
As the comic book Lex Luthor, yeah.
I think maybe I put this up before, but Jeff said some of this sounds like the Truman Show with a horror element. They change people, let them go, then follow them on for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, this one's a little nastier than Truman Show, though.
Yeah.
But...
And Richard Anderson, who later would be Oscar Goldman. He was the surgeon. He was doing all the miraculous plastic surgery and everything. Mm-hmm. And that's the last photo there. And then you've got Mary Hamilton. I remember as soon as I saw him, especially since this movie was shot in 65, I immediately thought of the Twilight Zone episode, One for the Angels.
Okay.
Which was with, what was it? Ed Wynn. And he played Mr. Death in that.
Oh, okay. I thought, so that's not the one with Robert Redford then.
No, Robert Redford played Mr. Death, and that was with Gladys Cooper. That was also another episode.
Oh, Gladys Cooper. I keep thinking it's boy, be nice to remember some stuff again. I keep thinking it's the one that was involved with Orson Welles movies all the time. She was in Bewitched.
You're thinking of Agnes Moorehead.
Agnes Moorehead. So yeah, Gladys Cooper, not Agnes Moorehead.
Yeah. Actually, I think you said that the last time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll always mix it up because I haven't seen the episode recently, and I kind of have that in my head.
Agnes Moorehead was in the episode The Invaders, and there's no dialogue in that entire Twilight Zone episode except at the very end when the ship is trying to take off, and the ship, ironically enough, was the ship that was utilized in Forbidden Planet. And what you find out is that she's actually
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
She's actually the alien. But anyway.
Yeah. I think the moral of the story is if you don't take anything else away from this movie, it's like if you've got Oscar Goldman and you've got Grandpa Walton and you get the mayor from Jaws showing up at your door, you're getting a phone call from these guys, just run.
Oh, and you forgot. I can't pronounce his last name. Kane Day.
Oh yeah.
That was Wo-Fat from throughout the 12 seasons from Hawaii Five-0.
Yeah. He had a really interesting background. He was born in New Jersey.
He was in Spring
He's,
Lake. Yeah.
so he's like one of these guys like Yul Brynner, where it's like, where are you from? You know, like Yul had such a complex, um, you know, uh, uh, upbringing, like all the different places he lived, and his genes, and where what his family was. He claimed to be part gypsy and all this other stuff. This guy, he was born in New Jersey. What was his birth name? His birth name was Kenneth Dickerson. What? And yet he goes on to, he has a stage name, and he goes on to play all of these exotic roles. I guess his mother was Chinese, Spanish, English, and Egyptian, and his father was Italian, Portuguese, and Zulu. So that kind of gave him kind of this all-purpose kind of exotic look that he got these parts in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But he was kind of a, like we talk about the chicken part with Jeff Corey. I mean, his whole scene was kind of a scene steal also, where he comes up with what his occupation is going to be in his new life.
Yeah. It really it all came together with that.
He was also a Manchurian candidate too.
Yes, he was. That's right. Yeah. Just want to say hi to Steve. I see Steve is joining us. Steve, welcome to the show. Sue commented that she said, Roy, perhaps you could say that Richard Anderson was playing Dr. Rudy Wells' character on $6 Million Man in the movie Seconds as a prelude to being Rudy Wells' boss years later. There you go.
Maybe that's one of the ways they faked their death. He sent him up in a space capsule.
And then you also had Frances Reed, who was playing Emily Hamilton, the wife. And then a year earlier, well, actually, this film came out in 1966 and 1965 for the folks out there that are soap opera watchers or were soap opera watchers, Days of Our Lives. She played Alice Horton for over 45 years on Days of Our Lives. She was opposite McDonald Carey, who did the opening narration for the show.
Right. Steady work.
Yeah, absolutely. But
one guy we didn't mention is Saul Bass, the guy who did the title design. He did so many of the classic opening credits and posters and things. He did Psycho. He did all the Otto Preminger movies, Anatomy of a Murder. I mean, you just look him up sometime. You'll definitely recognize his handiwork. But he was designed the titles for the film.
The titles were definitely unique. Did you, by any chance, go back and watch any of the previews? I think I may have sent you a copy.
No, you sent me the preview, and I deliberately didn't watch it because since I didn't know the movie, and I knew immediately when I was from like the first line I read about the movie, I said I don't want to know anything about this movie until I watch this movie. So I deliberately didn't watch the trailer, but I'll go back and watch them. Yeah, why did they do something with the design in the trailers?
Yeah, I just felt it was unique. Hey, I want to say hi to Catherine. Catherine's joining us, Catherine Speck. And you know what? She's actually offering a very interesting perspective. She says, boys, I love you both. That said, I think you're examining this film all wrong. Too much technique, too much inside baseball. Examine the film as if it were just discovered, an artifact from another time with no knowledge of the director or players. Just examine it as a standalone work. No, and that, you know what, Catherine? That's
well, we've been trying to talk about some of the themes and some of the kind of moral choices and things too. Not just, I mean, maybe you tuned in when we were talking about James Wong Howe or what have you, but yeah, it's not just the time. I mean, we did talk a little bit about the time, especially with the stuff we said about the House Un-American Activities and the fact that so many of the players in this were blacklisted.
Yeah.
And some other concerns like the post-war stuff, the post-death of a salesman stuff, and the disappointment with the American dream and the stifling suburban life of, we were talking about this, Catherine. You got to watch from the beginning. We love you too, though. Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate your, always being on here.
No, well, her comments are always very insightful. And
absolutely.
It's good to see.
Which is much appreciated.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to share too is All Roads Lead to Star Trek. We were just talking before about Jeff Corey, and he was Placis in the later third season episode, which was called The Cloud Miners, which incidentally I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think David Gerald was involved with the story of that too.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
I totally forgot that he was in that.
yeah,
Yeah, but to Catherine's point, the and we did talk about this at the beginning too, how mind blowing this must have been in '66 to see this movie because it's still such a powerful film. I think that it's the second. There's it's a strong movie throughout, but I think the second act, the middle part of the movie, kind of lets it down a little bit
mm-hmm.
because it's so vertiginous and so absorbing and so inexorable at the beginning, and then you get sucked into that at the end also, where it starts building and building and getting really
Right.
big. And in the
Because
middle, yeah,
because with the middle, it almost, you don't know the direction it's going to go. You're seeing that he's trying to accept, or he's not really accepting, but he's trying to deal with his new life. He's been set up, and it's that the former chapter is closed. The past door is closed. The new door is opened, and he's stepping through it. But as far as him accepting it, he's kind of on the fence. And then little trinkets along the way start to happen. And with him meeting Nora, and you feel that, okay, maybe it's going to go in this direction, and he's going to have this acceptance, well, inward acceptance within. And then what's interesting though is that it's so abrupt because it happens all so quickly with his drinking and her saying that she doesn't like when he drinks. And then the next thing you know, he's just done this total 180 from where he was so reserved, and now he's just really going in a totally different direction, but more so than was anticipated. And then has a breakdown, and then everything, just the floodgates open as far as you're thinking, okay, he's going to have this existence that he's accepting, and he's not. And then you really find out how evil this organization really is. And I'll say evil because it really is. I mean, everything it stands for. It's hiding behind the shadows that, like you were saying earlier, Will Gear is coming across like he was doing. This was something that was being done to help people, but now it's this big corporation,
and they're profiting off of this, off of all of this misery and misfortune. I mean, it literally is like the slaughterhouse. It's a parallel to the slaughterhouse,
which he goes through when he's on his way to meet the CEO of the corporation. Which again, it's almost like a foreshadowing.
Yeah, they're all used cows, which is what we see at the beginning of the movie.
And the other piece of it is that if he could have referred somebody else, it would have been fine, because he says at one point when he's having the meltdown, and Jeff Corey's like, okay, well, who else can you recommend? Because obviously this is how Charlie got out of his situation. Charlie went through this whole change because Tony, or Rock Hudson, does not recognize Charlie when he sees him, and he's saying that he's waiting to be called, and then he does get called, and he's off to the races again. Whereas they're going to do this with Tony, with Rock, but when he's asked if he can think of somebody, and he's like, I really can't, and he says, I'll have to think about it, and Jeff Corey's character's like, Ruby, he's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. No, take your time. But then he comes back and he's demanding. He's like, not only can I think of anybody, not only will I not tell you somebody I'm going to refer, but you will do this for me now. And it's like it's totally just like red flags going off everywhere within the organization, the corporation. Like, this is the weak link, and this is the light that's on the old style Christmas trees, that it's not working. It's going to take them all down. So what do? You get rid of it, and you replace it with a new one. And that's essentially what they're going to do. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, well, I had a point. I've forgotten it now, but it began with, talk about the banality of evil, that, that it's such a sinister and ethically, transgressive organization. And it's all for, profit is what it is. It's, I'm not sure if exactly that was my point, but a few minutes ago I was thinking, it was just like it's such a matter of fact thing for them. It's like when he goes into the office at the beginning, goes to the bank at the beginning. It's the same kind of operation there. They've got their secretaries and they've got their orderlies and what have you, and everything's got its own kind of order to it. But then again, they drug people and they extort people and they make corpses and stage people's deaths with the corpses. And when it doesn't work out with you, you become one of the people that gets made into, you get sent over to the cadaver division or whatever it is, the cadaver department. They put you in a hotel fire or something like that for somebody else so that they can start their new.
So let me ask you a question. This is something I was going to ask you before, and I forgot myself too. So he comes back to the organization after saying that he wants to have a like another makeover. Oh. So then they bring him in and they're taking pictures of him, and he's like, "Is this part of the process? I don't understand. What was your point? What did you take from that?"
Yeah, I kind of had a suspicion when they were talking about finding bodies and that sort of thing that it might have been something to keep in their files. I understood. Yeah, what I was thinking about with the banality of evil was not so much that they were selling you out for the money, but the banality of evil is that the whole thing just turns out to be basically a pyramid scheme. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, your friend sold you out. Now you're here. Now you got to go sell some more friends out so that you can get, you can go get another life and you won't die. And that's how they keep building their base, because like, as they say in the film, we can't very well advertise.
Yeah. He said, we can't put it in a magazine.
Got to make money somehow. And the very fact that everybody would know somebody. Oh, surely you know somebody who won a new life. And it's like, oh yeah, so and so. And that's
you don't have to be intimate with them. You just just casual acquaintance.
Exactly. So there's like this widespread discontent with their lives.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I'm pretty happy with my life. I don't care. But I'm not in the I'm not like trying to be the president of my bank and finding no reward in this soul crushing routine of doing the same thing every day and going back to my perfectly manicured lawn with my dead relationship and my daughter out of the house. And I guess I can see why he did it, but he could have just talked to his wife like they did later in the movie.
It would have been a lot easier, actually.
If people just talked, maybe they wouldn't have to sell their souls to the devil.
Yeah, well, that's what's really disturbing about the whole thing is that after all of that, he thinks that he's made his demands, and then they're like, okay, we're going to come through for you. And in the middle of the night, Will Gear appears. So if you got Will Gear banging on your door in the middle of the night, you may want to run. And they transfer him into another bed, and then they strap him down, and they're like, "Oh no, that's to make sure that you don't fall off." And then the next thing you know, they're gagging him, and then he realizes that that the priest that's there is giving him his last rites, and he's on the way to essentially the electric chair. Only in this case, it's the operating room where they're going to simulate an operation that makes it look like he died in a car accident and was impaled. Yeah, an artery was impaled or something.
I love that they went to the trouble to give him the last rites, because you want to keep it all. It's like we may be evil and all, but we're not inhumane.
Right.
We'll give him the last rites. Should just hand him a sword so he get into Valhalla. Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh, and Kirk Douglas being the studio behind the thing, his studio, he was also very big on hiring. He didn't pay attention to the blacklist either. That was a big deal with Spartacus.
Yeah,
and some of his other films, he helped break that. So I realize I'm jumping back to a point we made 35 minutes ago, but it's okay.
It's all good.
It just occurred to me. Yeah.
Just a couple comments that Sue posted when I was referencing about Jeff Corey. Yes, David Gerrold was involved in the Cloud Miners. I think he was the original writer of the episode. And Cloud Miners was based on David Gerrold's original story called Castles in the Sky. However, Fred Freiberger took him off the episodes, and the ending was not the same that David had intended. Well, there you go.
The other thing that occurs to me,
Thanks, Sue.
which I've now forgotten. It's funny, I'll think of stuff as you start to talk. I should just start scribbling stuff down.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe it was about the last rites. Maybe I jumped onto something else. Sorry, I got lost with the Cloud Minders.
No, I'm sorry. In regards to that, though, what's interesting, it's almost like the beginning, the end is the beginning, because the way the movie set out was almost like the same thing happening. And again, it's a cycle. And there was a scene that we talked about earlier that was filmed, but then unfortunately had been cut, where he does visit his daughter. And when he does visit his daughter, having not seen her and her husband, and the husband being Leonard Nimoy, that whole scene was cut. And it has relevance because the very end scene in this movie, when he is strapped to the chair and essentially they're preparing him to be executed so that they don't have an issue, he's seeing his daughter in his mind just before he dies, or maybe seeing her when he dies, so to speak. And that's the connection to having seen her on the beach when they had that original scene. But unfortunately, again, it was cut.
Yeah, I think my big discontent, there were a couple of things that were cut from that middle section. I think my big problem with it was it never fully illustrates enough of a contrast to the beginning of the movie. Sure, they have the grape pressing scene where it's like the crazy drunken orgy or what have you, but there's not enough. He doesn't experience enough success, I don't think, to really show that, okay, he's not happy with this either. You know what I mean? Because he's not happy with the new life. But why is he not happy with the new life? It doesn't, because why? You had one bad party, because he got to like the Dionysian party, but the cocktail party ended badly. But was that enough to like disillusion him? I mean, shouldn't there have been like something bigger than that to show that, this West Coast lifestyle is not for me either? And then to go back and say it's not for me.
Yeah,
it just didn't build to enough of a pitch for me at that point.
There could have been a lot more to that piece of the film. And this film, I think, ran about an hour and 40 minutes. So it could have been a solid 2 hours. And I think that I agree with you, Ross. If there was more to it in that section, it would almost have been more plausible, more believable. And it definitely was missing something. Sherry's saying she's home, and she's saying, "What a depressing movie!" It was. I mean,
it was a great movie, though. I must say, it was very good.
It was. It was from that
standpoint. Yeah,
it is very depressing, though. It is.
Yeah,
it's very sad. It's like when and the sad thing too is when he's meeting with his wife, and he's essentially saying that he's somebody that met her husband a year before he passed. She tells him that essentially he died years before he died in the supposed fire in the hotel room. It's just that he's taking it all in, and he's having the moment with her that he should have been having when they were together. And that's really sad.
She speaks all these hard truths to his face, but it's the first time ironically, it's the first time that they've talked in who knows how long, since we've seen them at the beginning of the movie. They don't communicate at all. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. If they kind of had their airing of grievances or whatever. Speaking of airing of grievances, that's the other thing about John Randolph. Apparently, he played the original Frank Costanza on Seinfeld.
Oh,
before Jerry Stiller took over.
Interesting.
And apparently, they pulled a George Lucas. I never realized that, and went back and reshot the scenes that he was in the early episode, and put Jerry in there, Jerry Stiller. But yeah, originally John Randolph was the George Costanza's father. You can still see it apparently on the DVD or something, and sometimes it's syndication, but
the deleted scenes,
or
the altered scenes.
Yeah, but I can't see him doing the airing of grievances like Jerry Stiller.
How about in one thing? Yeah, we've touched on the director, John Frankenheimer. We've talked about the cinematographer James Wong Ho.
Yeah.
How about Jerry Goldsmith?
Jerry Goldsmith. What's to say about Jerry? Except
I
what a
know.
score, you know?
Oh my God, it was incredible.
You know, from that opening with the organ, and
Absolutely.
it was to me, a very Bernard Herrmann-esque score in some respects. There was kind of that kind of ominous feeling to it. I can't think of the word that I want to. Foreboding. It was kind of a foreboding thing, and then even with the more tender music, there was kind of a cold edge to it. It was kind of cold, and yeah,
it very much set the tone for the movie.
It was a good score, and that's you know, I love the '80s. You know, I love '80s movies, but there's just something happened in the industry by the '80s, and everything became so slick and so in your face, kind of. And this was just like a really nice, dramatic, subtle piece. Even though sometimes he had the organ hit you in the face, it was a nice, subtle, blended piece of. It was more artfully done, I think, than something like Gremlins or Poltergeist. You know, I understand that those have their place, but
sure,
you know, and on the other hand, Jerry Goldsmith did Patton, which is not always the most subtle score, but it's a great score, and it's got elements with that echoplex where he's like reflecting back on his previous lives, in a previous life, but I've been here before, and you did it, and that's great too. But Jerry Goldsmith, we know about Jerry Goldsmith. Can you believe for all the great film scores that he wrote and all the great projects he wrote, he only won one Oscar?
That's crazy.
That was for The Omen.
I know. I remember us talking about that. Yeah.
But he had the bad fortune of going head to head with John Williams. Yeah. Not that they went head to head, but you know what I mean with the projects that they were given. John kept getting just this much, more on the strike zone than Jerry did as far as the big films, the films people would remember.
Right.
Even though John Williams did his share of smaller films too, it just seems that from the mid '70s on, I mean, already with Earthquake and Towering Inferno and Poseidon Adventure, and these, before anybody really knew who John Williams was, he was already associated with big movies. I mean, they might have known who he was, but it wasn't like a household name,
Jerry Goldsmith has been gone. He'll be gone 20 years this year. He was only 75 when he passed.
Yeah, he died of cancer. Yeah. It was too soon.
Such a talent.
Yeah, I know. My heart hurts even when I think about, they're guys like John Barry that I totally underappreciated in their lives. I enjoyed their film scores, but now it's like, oh my God, he's so much better than anybody out there. I wish John Barry were alive still writing scores. Like after the Academy Awards, like, oh my God, where's John Barry? I need you, John. But yeah, it is, when he was around, it's like, yeah, he wrote some pretty tunes, or he could do the swinging Bond stuff.
I was just going to say, when I think of John Barry, I think of James Bond.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he did stuff like, Born Free and Out of Africa, and he could come up with these big sweeping, post-romantic themes, but he could also do the Bonds. He could do Goldfinger. Come on.
Oh my God.
But I don't know. I don't know why I got on the John Barry jag. But yeah, I miss Jerry. I miss John Barry. They're all gone.
I know. And John Williams is what, 93? I'm guessing.
90. Well, he's born in 32, so he's 92.
He's a year younger than William Shatner. Okay.
Oh wow. There you go. Wow. You're younger than Shatner. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, William Shatner is going to be 93 this week.
Yeah.
Coming up. Well, not this week. Actually, a week from today. Today's the 15th, the 22nd. You'll be 93 in a week. I mean, that's... Oh, I don't know. Where has the time gone, Ross?
Where has the time gone? Where's the audience gone?
Even though you've tried to scare off the audience, Ross, they're still out there.
Somewhere in Time was another John Barry score.
Yes.
I don't know. Like I said, he's not even my absolute favorite composer, but boy, I would kill for a John Barry now. Fill my world with berries.
With berries. That's good.
I know.
But anyway, we're going to start to wind down and go to the shout outs. If you have any last minute comments about this movie,
Yeah.
please let us know, folks. It's if you haven't seen it, you definitely want to be in a certain type of mood. It is somewhat depressing. It's very thought provoking though, and definitely, like what Catherine says, just take it for what it is,
And
and
for the era that in which it was
the error
filmed,
that it's
but
taken
it's very very much applies now. It's a visceral movie. That's why I don't think it's really necessary to think about it. There's a whole other level of putting yourself in that time period, but
yeah,
I think it's timeless, and that's what makes it a classic that nobody knows about. Apparently,
timeless classic.
a timeless classic that nobody knows about, or I just didn't know about it. So it's interesting though that I talked about when we started talking. I said about what was free will and what was kind of foisted on him. He's kind of in a self-made hell, is what it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Once he takes that step, and he can't get out of it. It's like, I don't know if it's his lack of imagination, because he's so incredibly passive for most of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You really think about that? Like, he does nothing to change his home life at the beginning. In the middle, he's passive. He doesn't want to get involved with the stomping of the grapes, and then they like take him and throw him in there, and he really does very little for himself or to help himself. And then he takes that stand at the end where it's like, well, first of all, he can't think of anybody, and then he says, "I'm not going to name names." And you say, "Okay, well, we're gonna put you on the gurney then."
No, and I think that's an interesting point that you brought up too, because there is that that parallel, so to speak, with that. That's actually
there's a lot to think about, and I was trying to think of the significance of his given name, because he went by Tony.
Yep.
But his name was Antiochus, right? Antiochus, and the only Antiochus that I could think of. Did I get the name correct? He's
right.
Antiochus Tony Wilson. The only Antiochus I can think of is the villain in the Hanukkah story. He kind of like comes in and stomps all the traditions, the Jewish traditions, and he was a big proponent of Zeus. He was like a big Greco guy. He believed in the Greek gods and oppressed the Jews, and it was just like a totally ruthless fellow. And the only thing I can think is maybe it was intended ironically, because the Tony in the movie doesn't exercise any will at all.
Right.
I don't know why you'd be Antiochus, but maybe the artist whose shoes he stepped, maybe that's the irony. He stepped into that artist's identity and exhibited none of his characteristics. He was neither creative nor ruthless. But
somewhere in between.
There is a book, and maybe we should hunt down the book at some point. David Eli wrote the book. I've never seen it. So
yeah, because the movie was based on that, and that was from '63. It would be interesting too to do a comparison between the book and the movie. And,
a lot of times after seeing such a good adaptation, though, the books are disappointing.
True, that's true. Yeah, because I think the movie really is superior in that way. I mean, again, it has.
Let's trash the book we didn't read.
Yeah, well, there you go. Next time.
I'm going to need another beer.
You're going to need another beer on that.
I'm going to need a bigger beer.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
I'm going to need a boat of beer.
A boat of beer. Oh my goodness.
I know, it's a dream.
Is that your dream?
It's a dream to be desired. Yeah. I'd sell my soul to the devil for a boat of beer. Not really. I'll have a little gear here in a minute.
Anyway, all right. Matt's out of the loop. He said, "I am completely out of the loop because I haven't watched this film."
Good, because we're going to ruin it for you. I would have sent you a link, but I couldn't find it streaming free anywhere on the internet. I had to rent it. So.
Oh, and Sue is letting you know how Antiochus is
Yeah,
pronounced.
I know. I thought it was Antiochus myself, but I think it's Antiochus.
Antiochus.
But I'm not sure. You could be right, because when I first read it, I thought it was Antiochus, but that would be like Annie M from Wizard of Oz.
Matt Singer, according to your personality chart, Ross, you are best suited for a career in chartered accountancy.
Absolutely.
Oh boy, that I can
Matt's been
speak
watching scenes.
anyway. All right, I'm going to go to the shout outs.
Yeah, if I
again,
were an accountant, yeah, you'd so be before the IRS if I were your accountant.
Here come the suits.
Yeah.
So if you have any last minute comments, please post
I
them
was
out
a used book dealer, Matt.
as we bring
You know, I don't know that their first thing about taxes.
We're going to bring you creative awareness through our shout outs. All right. So Mike and Mary Beth for Sci-Fi Distill, they're on Wednesday nights. They're going to be back March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And their discussion next week is going to be a surprise, and they're going to be having a surprise guest host on. Mary Beth is not going to be on. She's going to be watching in the shadows of the chat. So check out Mike and Mary Beth for Sci-Fi Distilled. I want to give a shout out to my friend Bill and Scarado for Country Gate Theater. And Country Gate is back and with their 52nd season. And they are opening with The Odd Couple. And that is going to be between the dates of April 20th and 21st and 27th and 28th, Saturday and Sunday, both respectively. And for information, if you are in the New Jersey, Harmony, Belvedere area, it is in Belvedere, New Jersey. The website for Countrygate is www.countrygate.org. And you can also visit Bill's website, which is www.billscarado.com. And actually, I will put that into the chat so that you can actually see that. There we go. Hopefully that works. There we go. And then next, I want to give a shout out to my friend Todd on Todd's Corner. Todd is going to be broadcasting on Sunday, March 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And he will be having on the show as a special guest, filmmaker Jeffrey Morris, and friend filmmaker Jeffrey has been on the show here as well. And Jeffrey is going to be providing updates on the Eagle Obsession documentary, which is 50% complete. And there's some footage that if you have not gone online, you can definitely check it out. And for information about the documentary, it's at www.eagledocumentary.com. And this will give you updates in regards to the production of the film and how it is moving along. And then also, just as a reminder, everybody, there is an Indiegogo in place, and I will put the link in the chat so you can check that out. And again, it's in regards to helping move forward with the production of the film, and you can definitely check that out as well too. And also that information is available on the show's page. The Eagle Obsession page. Also, a shout out to Captain Phil Planet, WUSB 90.1 FM, Stony Brook, New York. The captain's schedule is on Friday nights at 9 p.m. So you can actually tune into him this evening, and it goes to about 11:30 p.m. And again, that's 90.1 FM, Stony Brook, New York, for the captain's schedule. And also our friends at Trek Talking, a Star Trek podcast. We thank them for the support of this show. Speaking of David Gerald, they actually had him on last night, or actually Wednesday night, I believe. So definitely check them out. You can just go to their Facebook page. Also want to give a shout out to Martha for Studio One Thrift. That Martha showcases her lineup of all seasons, all year long. Quality, stylish, affordable clothing for both men and women. And you can also receive styling tips. And the address is www.studio1thrift.com. And I do want to give a shout out to Martha too, because I went thanks to Lou, and I also want to thank Lou and also Steve Feinberg. I got to visit with Lou last week. If the folks that tuned in, we did a special showing on Saturday night, and definitely going over just a lot of Lou's stuff that he has. I mean, he's an incredible artist and filmmaker, and with the things he does. And we were showing his collection in regards to specifically to the robot B9 from Lost in Space, the Robotoid from Lost in Space that he built. We were also talking about the films that he's made over the years as well, and the one that's currently in production, Found in Space, which I was a part of last week. And it's just amazing what Lou is able to do with that. And I got to go to an event last Saturday, or excuse me, Sunday, and it was an Oscar event that was affiliated with the Rhode Island Film and TV division, and it was really cool. So shout out to Martha, because she actually helped me in regards to picking out stuff that Studio One Thrift actually offers, which was very much appreciated. And with that, Martha has got does a live presentation once a month, usually towards the end of the month, on her channel, which is also on Facebook. And I'm actually going to be hosting it. So I'll be there doing that live, and you'll get to see some of the clothes that a lot of the models will be wearing, men and women. And what I will do is I will post the link for that into the chat section. So if you want to check that out, it's going to be next Monday, which is going to be the 25th of March, and that will be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And I just shared the link, and it's a Facebook event. So definitely check that out, and I'm looking forward to that, and that will be a lot of fun. And also want to give a shout out to my son, Ryan, who is doing Run by Ryan, and the website for that is www.runbyryan.com. It's an online running coach service provider, and Ryan's been doing this for several months, so definitely check it out. And then also, Ross, if you can let everybody know what you've got going on.
All right, these are my 3 recorded shows. Picture Perfect's the movie music show that just ended. That was all music from movies set in the Roman Empire, or during in ancient Rome, I should say, for the Ides of March, which is today, so perhaps not an inappropriate film. Beware the Ides of March, Roy.
Yeah. I was actually going to mention it earlier too, Ross. And I forgot.
Yeah, me too. But we jumped right into it. Sweetness and Light is my light music show. That's Saturday morning at 11. These are Eastern times, by the way. And that's all St. Patrick's Day oriented, tomorrow morning at 11 here on the East Coast. And The Lost Chord tomorrow night at 7 o'clock is a tribute to English composer Stephen Dodgson, who I interviewed when he was 88.
Wow.
And he was, at the time, the closest living relative to Charles Dodgson or Lewis Carroll. The guy who wrote Alice in Wonderland. So none of the music has to do with Alice in Wonderland, but it's kind of interesting that he was born on St. Patrick's Day, and he was a relative of Lewis Carroll. But I have an hour of his music for his 100th birthday. He's long past now. He died about 6 months after I interviewed him. So I'm rebroadcasting that show tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern. They all originate from KWAX, which is actually on the West Coast. So if you're out west, just take 3 hours off each of the running times there, and that's the time they start. I tease them on my Facebook page, so you look there for previews of each of the shows at Classic Ross Amico. Thanks, Roy.
Sure, Ross. And I actually put that URL into the comment section as well too.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks. So just to let everybody know, and actually let me stop sharing the screen, and I'll reshare it in one moment. So I try to get this to come back up. Let's try take number 2. Is it sharing, Ross? Is it there? There it is. Okay. So this Sunday, I'm going to be doing a special show, and it'll be out at a special time. It will be 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And this is going to be episode 227, and it's London 1999, a special 50th anniversary event. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to have my special guest, Warren Friedrich, is going to be on the show, and he is the organizer of the Space 1999 convention taking place in London in September, which I'm helping him with. So we're going to be talking about the upcoming convention and some announcements that are going to be taking place. on the show regarding the convention. So that will be, again, this Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're usually like on at 7. But we're going to do it a little earlier because that way the folks in the UK and Europe will be able to tune in. The time will be reasonable. It'll only be a 4-hour difference because right now is my understanding, if Colin's still out there, there's only a 4-hour difference. I believe the daylight savings time in the UK takes place and in Europe doesn't take place until March 31st. So anyway, that's this coming Sunday. And then next Friday is, as we were saying earlier, is William Shatner's 93rd birthday. Now, Ross is not going to be available for that, so I'm actually going to be running solo on this, and I'm going to be celebrating the show with a tribute to William Shatner's 93rd birthday. And if folks want to come on the show, I will share the link so you can come on StreamYard to say a few words. You know, talk for maybe about 5 minutes each because I'm just trying to give different folks the opportunity to come on, and we're going to talk about your favorite either William Shatner movie or television show. And I thought it would be a kind of cool way to celebrate his birthday. And then also too, just so you know, his movie is being released next Friday, although in certain areas you can probably go the day before on that Thursday. And that's the name of the film is You Can Call Me Bill. So that's next week. So that's pretty cool. As a reminder, just to let people know, Ross and I will not be on the following week. We are going to be off for the Easter weekend. So there will be no show the weekend of March 29th through Sunday, March 31st. And also the other thing is, mark your calendars, Friday, April 5th at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We will be celebrating the 4th anniversary of this show. It officially started on April 3rd of 2020. And what better way to celebrate than kick off the next season? And it'll be a total of 4 years since it began. And then again, we'll be celebrating that on April 5th, which is a Friday. So
that's crazy. It only feels like 4 years.
At least I know you're not a pod, Ross.
Not 4 years for me yet, though.
No, I know.
I didn't come along.
What's that?
I didn't come along till when? April?
No, you came along in June.
June. I was a June baby.
You're a June baby.
The stork dropped me in June, right into sci-fi heaven. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
I needed time to grow my beard.
I know, right? I can't believe it's been 4 years already, too, Ross. That's crazy.
I know.
It really.
Time flies like an arrow.
Yeah, I mean,
fruit flies like a banana. Yeah.
There you go. give or take, we've done. I mean, right now the count is 2. I mean, this is the 26th episode. I mean, it could be a little off by maybe 1 or 2. I mean, some stuff along the way, may have been, but essentially it's there. But I just can't believe that. I mean, even in reflection, sometimes somebody will say, "Did you talk about that movie?" And I think I was just saying this to Lou last weekend. It's like, did we cover that? I don't even remember.
but yeah, like I was convinced we'd covered John Frankenheimer's Island of Dr. Moreau, but it's only because we talked about the one from the 70s.
Right.
And in doing so, we talked about the Frankenheimer version. I tortured myself by watching that version of it, but we didn't actually talk specifically about it. I don't think. Right. But I know what you're saying. Like sometimes, did we do that movie?
Yeah. I mean, now I know how those big Hollywood actors feel when they've done so many television shows, as part of their their credits, and they're like, oh yeah, I did that show, but I can't tell you anything about it. I don't remember. I mean, it's like, okay, I guess I get that now. It's like, Ross and I talked about that. Okay, I did the research for that show and that episode, and I don't remember that. Okay, it's all blending together, Ross.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we do it every week. And then early on, we do it like twice a week, or you do a third show.
I know I was on fire. It's crazy,
Mhm.
but it's fun to go back and watch, and I'm really happy that it's preserved and it's on YouTube, and now it's on YouTube at least for the last year and a half, and of course it's on Facebook.
Until we get those solar storms next year, they're gonna wipe out the internet.
Everything gets knocked out.
Start backing stuff up now, folks.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Preparation. But yeah, and I think we're pretty much set. So that I'm looking forward to the anniversary episode. That should be fun. I mean, we've had a lot of fun stuff that's happened along the way. So it's all good. I always like to think back of when the first time you came on, and we were doing Stella Star or Star Crash. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be too rough for your crowd. We're just out of control. But the rolling eyes are what makes it. I think he knew that though when he posted.
Yeah, there we go.
We get it, Jeff.
We get it.
Yeah.
It's all good. But thank you, folks, for tuning in. Again, if you haven't liked the show's page, please do so. If you haven't followed the show's page, please do so. Whether it be on Facebook or YouTube, and please share. We really do appreciate that. And we're actually up to, I believe, 900 followers. So 1,000 is just right around the corner.
Like and follow my page too.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
Where are these people? I know some of them do. I know some of you guys do follow the page, but
yeah, well,
I mean, you don't have to really follow. Just click on there that you follow.
just click and then leave. That's what Ross is saying.
It looks good. It makes it look like somebody looks at my page.
Your pages are always entertaining, Ross.
All right.
I did share the Indiegogo as well too for the Eagle Obsession. So if you have the opportunity to check that out, please do so too. I pretty much shared everything in the URL for everybody. So I'm just trying to make sure everybody's mentioned out there. And be back on Sunday to talk about the convention. It's for September and Space 1999. So looking forward to that. And it's going to be a busy weekend. But as always, Ross, thanks. It's always fun.
Good movie, Roy.
Going
into it, it was like one of these things like, oh, do I really want to put myself through this? But it was really a good movie.
Surprised you, didn't I?
I'm surprised that I didn't know of its existence. So, yeah, good movie.
I had actually never heard of it before. And when I came across it, I was like, okay, this looks interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it's definitely, it's not a cheery, happy movie, but it was a well-made movie.
Yeah.
So go with that. But anyway, live long and prosper, like we always like to say, and enjoy the rest of your Friday night, everyone, and your Saturday. And
happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. Didn't get to say that. That's right. That's 2 days away. You know, before we sign off, it's crazy too. COVID was on when everything really started shutting down, was around March 17th, March 18th. So it's literally coming up on the 4-year anniversary of that. That itself is insane too. But yes, on a positive note, happy St. Patrick's Day.
You can go back and watch Darby O'Gill.
There you go.
All right.
Thanks, Lou.
Good night, Lou.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.